teachers of Reddit, what is the strangest note you have had to write home to parents? A teacher had to write a weird note about me when I was in grade 3 to 4. I was playing in this jungle gym thing made of tires, and I was climbing out of the tire you see. My friend said, "Ha, it's like you're crawling out of a vagina." To which my other friend replied to a girl who was maybe 10 to 15 feet away, "Hey Nicole, Kirodik wants to climb out of your vagina." She told my teacher, and I got in trouble, even though I didn't say anything. My mom got a note from my teacher saying that I wanted to climb into the girl's vagina, and that I shouldn't be thinking that way. But in all fairness, she's really hot now, and I'd so get in that. As a swim coach to young kids, some as young as 6, I once had to write a note to the tooth fairy. One of my 6-year-olds lost her tooth while swimming and freaked out. Swim practice came to a screeching halt as I had to put together a search party for the tooth. The kid scoured the pool bottom, and to no avail, the tooth was not recovered. Her mom was out of town and the girl began to cry frantically because without a tooth, she wouldn't get anything from the tooth fairy. Another mom who witnessed the events came up to me with some stationery, and I wrote a note to the tooth fairy listing the events that had happened, ensuring the fairy that indeed Ella had lost her tooth and was entitled to her prize. TL. Doctor. 6-year-old girl loses tooth at swim practice. I write a letter to the tooth fairy. Your son tried to milk a female student during the cow presentation. Edit. Story time. I teach kindergarten, but this was a grade 3 class I was supervising. We had a dairy presentation put on by a local farmer that came complete with a milking demonstration. One of the boys thought it would be appropriate to try to milk a female student. He stood in front of her and tried to milk her chest. Awkwardness was had. Not my story, but my dad's, who was principal at my high school. There was a kid who was suspected, known to be, dealing weed to other year 10s one day. Naturally, dad went with the kid to his locker and told him to empty his backpack. One of the items he pulled out was a small metal box, which given the situation is obviously sus. The kid was told to open the box, but he refused, ran to the nearest rubbish bin, and emptied the contents. He was visibly distressed. Thinking he had him done for, dad went over to the bin, stuck his hand in and pulled out a massive handful of pubes. Apparently the kid was so embarrassed that his mum might find out he'd shaved his privates that he decided to carry them on his person everywhere. He got a letter sent home about failing to follow instructions from a teacher. I can only imagine what the letter said. I was sent home with a note in 2nd grade. The note simply read, "If Drew 707 is going to eat that much garlic at home, please have him bring some for the rest of the class." The night before, my mom wasn't home, and I asked dad for a snack. He roasted a large head of garlic and gave me some crackers to eat with it. Apparently I reeked. Not a note, but I once had to call a parent to explain that I'd confiscated their son's cell phone because he was using it in class. I explained that he claimed to have been day trading. I thought he was being a smartass. His dad says, "Oh my god, he promised he was going to stop that. That's his college fund." Well, way back in elementary school I got suspended for blowing bubbles in the bathroom. They had handed them out for Halloween and I just wanted to blow them. The weirdest part is that the principal cited that it was a choking hazard on the note home to my parents. When I showed them the note they had a good hearty laugh, and on the day of my suspension I went to see 101 Dalmatians in the movies. My wife is a teacher. One day after a science lesson involving scales, she had to write a note home saying, "Your son was very disruptive today. He frequently said that we should weigh our excrement on the scales and give a prize to whomever had the biggest BM." I laughed so hard that I made her save the note. I have multiple copies that I frequently show to friends now. When my son was in preschool, I received a note from the teacher that he had been put in timeout for whatever infraction. He was placed behind the teacher's desk while she tended to the rest of the class. He disassembled her chair with no tools. I also received a parent-teacher meeting along with that note. Edit. He was 3 when he did this. I just asked him how he did it. He used a pair of safety scissors. His tool, we had his IQ tested at 7 using the Woodcock-Johnson test of cognitive ability. His overall score was 137. When he asks a question on how something works, I either hand him a book or find some type of model for us to put together. He will turn 12 this summer. I used to be a pretty weird chick. The whole anime fangirl thing. Well, I had a phase where I wore cat ears all the time and would meow. No teacher or my parents ever cared, since I was a pretty awesome student. But one day my baby brother goes to kindergarten and proceeds to only meow, because I would meow at him all the time. His teacher wrote my parents a letter. My mom framed it and has it in her office because it is hilarious. Dr. Kick's brother refuses to participate in class discussions and only meows. He caused the entire class to meow and is being very disruptive. He gives me shit for it to this day when my family brings it up to mock him. My fiancée is a first grade teacher and had to write a note home at the beginning of the school year for one of her students. At the start of the school year, she has to send a letter home asking the parents to provide basic school supplies like colored pencils, markers, hand sanitizer, tape, etc. She had a student take charge and collect the supplies from around the house himself. The student brought in hand sanitizer and used it before heading to lunch. The hand sanitizer wouldn't evaporate and was making his hands warm. He had brought in a small bottle of Kai 2-in-1 warming gel. My fiancée couldn't stop laughing while she wrote the note to his parents. I was conducting a science lab using a diluted biuret solution, a strong base. One student spilled some in a chair and didn't tell me. A girl in the class sat down in it and soon started feeling burning/itching/irritation in the affected area. I ran her across the hall to the office and got a female staff member to take her to the bathroom with instructions to get her jeans off and rinse the affected area. By the time I returned to the room, another student who had witnessed the event had decided to pour the solution on his hand to see what would happen. I had to write a note home to all the parents explaining the whole incident. There was once this kid that may have been mildly retarded, but everyone treated him as a normal kid, so he was in all normal classes. One day during human growth and development or sex ed, we were watching a cartoon video on masturbation, and about halfway through the video we hear a scream from a female classmate, followed by the entire class running out of the class. Turns out he wanted to try what he saw in the movie. This kid has also been caught for wiping budgers in his hair and on other people. Parents must have got a lot of weird letters home. Not a note, but a very panicked phone call. The backstory is that I was really more of a mom to my little brother, and I was his emergency contact, because it was easier for me to leave school than my mom to leave work after my parents divorced. There was a sign-out sheet whenever you picked your kid up, and being a sarcastic type, I would sign him out for all sorts of ridiculous reasons whenever he had a doctor's appointment or something, which was often because kids, you know. Anyway, I'm talking zombie apocalypse, hookers and blow ninja training. This went on for years. The only one we ever got a phone call about was a pretty innocuous Blues Brothers reference, Mission from God. An office aide called my mom in a panic to make sure me and the kid weren't going to blow some stuff up, I guess. My mother of course laughed the whole thing off, and I signed him out as Mission from Definitely Not God next time, and no one said a thing. I always thought that it was pretty messed up that they didn't bat an eye at hookers and blow. The vice principal at my HS called my parents to tattle on me. They reinstated the Pledge of Allegiance after years of not doing it, not sure why, and when the kid who sat behind me didn't say it, I didn't either, just to see what would happen. All the kids who didn't recite the pledge were sent to the VP's office. I overheard the kid say that he was Jewish, and it was against his religion to say the words under God, and they let him go without incident. My turn was up next, so I told him that I was an atheist and I didn't believe in God, and saying the pledge was against my beliefs. The VP flipped his lid, got right in my face, and said things to me like, "How can you look at yourself in the mirror every morning? And you're a disgrace," etc. etc. I was a drum major in the marching band, not a majorette, big difference, and he asked me how I could salute the US flag during football games when the national anthem was played, and I replied coldly, "Because it's my job." I thought the top of his head was going to blow right off. A little backstory, I was really just doing it to rile this guy up as he was a real jerkwood, and he didn't like me because my older brother was a notorious troublemaker, while I was a straighter student and very involved in lots of extracurriculars. The VP was desperate to catch me doing something wrong, and had tried and failed to mess with me in other ways throughout HS. It really was a weird Ferris Bueller kind of situation. Looking back at it, dude had some issues. Anyway, VP called my house and got my stepdad ranted on for a while about how they should pull me from marching band and other unkind things. My stepfather replied gruffly, "I don't give a shit what she does." Not getting any satisfaction there, the VP went to my music teacher demanding I be removed from band, and he politely refused, saying that it was my choice and that my job with the band was completely separate. That guy was the single most influential teacher I ever had. Long story, but it was gratifying to be supported when I was bucking the system such as it was then. Eater, I'm getting a lot of comments about fairness, etc. And I'm realizing I should have mentioned that this happened around 1990. Things were pretty different then, so just as a frame of reference. So my friend Dan worked at a daycare/preschool during one of his summers off from college. He had a 3-year-old student, Jack, that would frequently grab his junk and growl. Well, one day, the kids are changing for swimming lessons and Jack is running around the class naked. The teachers are trying to wrangle him, and when all of a sudden, he grabs his junk, growls, and then smacks a little girl in the face with his penis. Dan had to make an incident report for this, and not knowing what to say, writes Jack made inappropriate contact with another student. When Jack's mom came to pick him up, she asked what inappropriate contact was, and Dan had to tell her what happened, to which she simply replied, "Oh my." A week later, Jack was pulled out of the school. TL. Dr. Kid Cock slapped a little girl in the face. A close friend of mine is a rather attractive 7th grade science teacher. There have been enough incidents, read, he be jerking it, with one student, that he was required to have a placemat on his desk with outlines of his hands, so they wouldn't wander below the desk while she was teaching. His parents were surprisingly not shocked. In kindergarten, my boyfriend and I went into the bathroom together. He then proceeded to take my dress off. At that point, the other kids in my class realized we were missing and started messing with the light switch, which was outside the door. As I was apparently more scared of the dark than running around in my birthday suit, I sprinted out into the middle of the classroom in nothing but my Wednesday underwear. My parents got a letter warning them of inappropriate behavior and the importance of wearing underwear with the correct day of the week, as it had been a Monday. My boyfriend had apparently also pulled the same stunt with my best friend earlier in the day, so that was a fun little main-age choice talk. TL. Doctor, some dudes learn how to pimp at a real young age, and day of the week underwear is super treacherous. In maybe 2nd grade, I had fallen down, I think at recess, and sent to the nurse's office. As far as I can remember, I think it just scrapped my thigh, but for some reason I had to go. The nurse needed to spray something on the area, probably disinfectant, and told me I needed to drop my pants. I was maybe 7, so I didn't see the big deal. I dropped them. She sprayed me, and I was allowed back to recess. She was very impressed though, that I was so brave to drop my pants, and called my mom to let her know. I can only imagine how odd that was for my mom to hear the school nurse talk about how brave her 7-year-old son was to drop his pants for her. I had to call a student's parents because he was drawing dicks all over other kids' papers. I warned him that I had to call. He was a junior in high school, and told him that if he broke the news first, it would probably go smoother. When I called, I calmly explained to his mom that he had been drawing crude penises everywhere. She was quiet for a moment and then replied, "Oh, that's what he was saying." When he called me, I thought he said he was drawing peanuts. The next day, the kid finds me and says that morning at breakfast, his dad was at the table reading the paper. When he sat down, Dad creases the paper down and says, "You think you're fucking funny, drawing dicks on people's papers? You're done." I'm not a teacher, but I can only imagine how difficult it was for the author of this particular note. Friend of mine, at the time, was really into masturbating freshman year of HS, and one time during PE, decided that he would beat off behind the bleachers. Turns out he was beating off into a shuttlecock. It was badminton day. He comes out from behind the bleachers and just launches the shuttlecock and semen flies everywhere. He is promptly escorted to the principal's office. I can only imagine what it was like to write that letter. I was at a teacher's conference and there were a pupil that had a short presentation about social media, and he actually opened the front page of Reddit in front of 1200 teachers and a live internet stream. Could have been a pretty awkward moment, but he did get away with it though. Nothing too bad on the front page. Would have been a great note though. Showed porn to 1200 teachers. I think I was in grade 7 at this point. Every year the female GRAs go to the local high school for a women's sports day, and afterwards they get a gift bag which contains some candy, deodorant, and tampons. Well, me being the very mature 13-year-old I found out that if you push the back of the tampon applicator the actual tampon comes flying out. So I was basically shooting people with tampons. So the next day I get on the bus and the bus driver starts bitching about how she found tampons on the bus. She knew it was me, so when we got to school she took me to the office and told the principal. So long story short, he called my parents about the incident and my mom makes fun of me every day for getting in trouble by shooting tampons at people. Hello, Mrs. Gramman? Yes, your son was shooting tampons at people and he's in trouble.